The New York Times, a former newspaper, is calling on reporters around the country to do more tough journalism on Donald Trump. Times media columnist Lonesome Bubble sent a memo to his colleagues saying, quote, "Well, boys, the Republicans are back in office. Time to start writing about homelessness and the Constitution again." By the way, does anyone have a copy of the Constitution? I put mine away in 2008 and haven't seen it since, unquote. Fearing that many mainstream reporters may have allowed their skills to erode after they spent the last 8 years staring at the president and sighing, "Oh, look, he's so black," the Times has issued an instructional guide entitled Journalism for Dummies, who are ideologically corrupt and blinded by leftist race pathology. And did I mention corrupt? Here are some experts from this handy manual on how to make journalism again. 1. Learn how to use question marks to turn lies into headlines. Question marks are a useful journalistic tool for taking scurrilous and unfounded assertions that would end the career of any honest journalist, or even a New York Times journalist, and transforming those dishonest assertions into morally unassailable questions. For example, instead of writing, "Donald Trump is going to shred our Constitution," try, "Will Donald Trump shred our Constitution?" This will not only prevent you from expressing an absurdly biased opinion based on no evidence whatsoever, it will keep you from having to find out what's actually in the Constitution, which, let's face it, has really small print on crinkly brown paper, making it difficult to read. 2. Learn how to use anonymous attributions. Anonymous attributions can help turn your hysterical anti-Trump rants into important news stories. Instead of writing, "Donald Trump hates black people," why not write instead, "Sources say officials are reporting that many people believe some think a highly placed observer feels that Donald Trump hates black people." That way you can besmirch the man's character and stir up anger against him without violating New York Times standards for honesty. Just imagining for a moment that the New York Times has standards for honesty. 3. Treat the poor with dignity and respect. Although this will take more effort than you're used to, caring about the poor can be an effective way to smear those you dislike. While during the Obama administration, it was perfectly natural to call the police to have a disgusting wino removed from the Times lobby, during the Trump administration, always remember the disgusting wino is now a poor, suffering homeless person. Thus, instead of coming into work and saying, "Yuck, I had to have the police remove a disgusting wino from the lobby," and then sitting down to make up a fantastic tale about how the Obama economy is really booming, now you can get right to work writing a story about the plague of homelessness sweeping the nation while an uncaring Republican sits in the White House. By the way, when you're done with the story, please don't forget to call the police to have the wino removed from the lobby. Trigger warning, I'm Andrew Klavan, and this is The Andrew Klavan Show.
I feel hunky-dunky, life is tickety-boo. Birds are winging, also singing hunky-dunky-doo. Ship-shape, tipsy-topsy, the world is zippity-zing. It's a wonderful day, hurrah, hooray! It makes me want to sing. Oh, hurrah, hooray! Oh, hooray, hurrah!
Hurrah! It's Mailbag Day! Whoa, yay! Is there a new thing up there?
There's a swan is swimming.
Swan is swimming. He's just a swan, just swimming. You couldn't think of anything, right?
I ran out of puns.
Bring in the new talent, all right. All right, this week I went home last night and I was thinking about what a crazy week this has been. It's a crazy period. What we're really watching is we are watching the collapse of the news media in real time. We're watching, they've disgraced themselves for 8 years. They disgraced themselves during the Bush administration, but they disgraced themselves in the right direction, in the sense that we actually want the press to attack the powerful and to make sure everything they do is right and to, pick out scandals where they see them and all this stuff. They were totally unfair to George W. Bush, but I'd rather have them being unfair than do what they did to Obama, which was just ignore scandal after scandal after scandal, malfeasance after malfeasance. Today, as we're sitting here, the biggest news story is the rape of Aleppo, the destruction of Aleppo. This is a place where people are kicking down the doors of ordinary folks just like you and me and blowing them away, just slaughtering people everywhere. And much of it I mean, I won't say it's Obama's fault, but I will say that he had his malfeasance, his ideological ignorance, his refusal to let go of his ideology, his fear to take any movement, to make any movement, his fear of being a colonialist and all this stuff. All of this contributed to what's happening. Our president contributed to what's happening. That's the big story. But instead, what we're hearing about is every sneeze that Donald Trump sneezes and how it's going to destroy our nation. What a terrible... yesterday I played Keith Olbermann, which gave me the biggest laugh of the... It really was hilarious. Let's play another. I have another one for today. I think I may bring on Keith every single day. He is now the funniest thing happening on YouTube. Let's play.
The people should know the truth. They should know that we have sustained a defeat without a war, the consequences of which will travel far with us along our road. They should know that we have passed an awful milestone in our history when the whole equilibrium of representative government has been deranged, and that the terrible words have for the time been pronounced against our democracy, "Thou art weighed in the balance and found wanting." And do not suppose that this is the end. This is only the beginning of the reckoning. This is only the first sip, the first foretaste of a bitter cup, which will be proffered to us year by year, unless by a supreme recovery of moral health and martial vigor we arise again and take our stand for freedom.
Huzzah! Huzzah! Let's charge over the hill and bang ourselves in the wall. The guy reminds me of the movie Scanners. Remember the movie Scanners where people's heads exploded? It's like, and also, what happened to contractions? Do not suppose. Why isn't it don't suppose? Like, why is it more serious if we don't use contractions? The only reason I play this, aside from my own personal amusement, is because this is the voice of the media. Keith Olbermann is now the voice of the media. People always pick on Rush Limbaugh. He's been the big target of the left. And I'm a big fan of Rush Limbaugh. And one of the reasons I'm a fan of Rush Limbaugh is Rush speaks in the language of ordinary people, but he actually elevates people. He actually does educate them and introduce ideas that they might not have thought of and in ways that they can get and understand. He actually is... Unlike a lot of conservative media plays down to people and lives down at the lowest common denominators, spreading silly conspiracy theories and spreading anger and, pumping up anger and self-righteousness, which is one of the flaws of the right, and as well as the left. But on the left, they have a whole different panoply of sins. But, on the right, we can tend to get, there tends to be a lot of anger, and people play into that. But Rush doesn't do that. He actually lifts people up. But at least you know that when you listen to Rush, you are listening to a commentator. When you listen to him, he's expressing his opinion. What the left doesn't know is the New York Times is their Rush, except that he doesn't elevate. The Times doesn't elevate people. It drags them down. The news that they're getting it's all Keith Olbermann. It is all Keith Olbermann. He is the muse of the New York Times, of CBS, of ABC. Listen to the, we're talking about is this whole thing about Russia. Russia hacked into the DNC, and now some anonymous sources have said, it was all because they wanted Donald Trump to get elected. But of course, that's ridiculous because they couldn't have known any more than anyone here knew that Donald Trump was going to get elected. Nobody knew he was going to get elected. If they were doing anything, it was probably trying to weaken what they thought was the upcoming Clinton presidency. They probably didn't even bother with Donald Trump because they didn't think he could get elected. Nobody did. Nobody thought that. So why would they think it? They weren't even here. Like our guys were here and weren't saying that he could be elected. So listen to this. I think this is Dana Bash, who's just a Democrat hack, and she's got Nancy Pelosi on, and Nancy Pelosi is saying, we need an investigation, we need 1,000 investigations over all this stuff. And listen to what she said.
Donald Trump responded when he said the intelligence community has said that Russia was responsible for the hacking. He returned it with, they're the same people who told us that Saddam Hussein Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. Did not. The intelligence community never said that. The evidence, there is no intelligence to support that claim. That threat was made by the Bush-Cheney administration. As you see in Britain, they've dispelled all of that. It was a massive misrepresentation of the American people. But there's nothing in the intelligence to support the threat that Bush-Cheney was presenting. So it was a cute response. It was a cute response, and other people maybe have fallen for it. But it's important to note that a president should pay attention to the intelligence. If he's he has to have the knowledge to have the judgment to make the decisions a president makes.
I think I said that was CNN. It's MSNBC, where at least people know they're being lied to. But let's hear what Nancy Pelosi was saying before the Iraq War.
Saddam Hussein certainly has chemical and biological weapons. There's no question about that.
Oops. Ruh-roh. I mean, what the hell? You know, of course our intelligence people, all the intelligence said this. All the Democrats thought it was true. Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, everybody thought that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. There was no, so she just sits there and lies, and nobody does a thing about it. The New York Times had a piece. They had a piece that was called "Mental Illness," the crisis of mental illness in Trump's America. Like, how did it get to be Trump's America? He's not even president yet. And what's really interesting, by the way, is a token of Obama's weakness, that he kind of is the president already. We're kind of more interested in what's happening in Trump Tower than we are what's happening in the White House. I mean, Aleppo is going up in smoke. Obama's doing nothing. It's like it's not even happening. He's taking pictures. Oh, it's Christmas time. And he's got, doing all his little photo ops. But what Trump is doing really matters. I have to play this one clip because it's so interesting. It's so amazing. When we're talking about mental illness, here is the actress Ali Wentworth, and the most important thing about Ali Wentworth to this show is that she is the wife of George Sokolopoulos, right? So newsman extraordinaire, a guy running a network news station who is a Clinton hack, the guy who told Hillary Clinton, "I love you, Hillary." It's in his memoir, "I love you, Hillary," and he's running a news department. Here's what happened at their home on election night.
Now it's scary just because the world is so unpredictable and so different.
Right.
And
it's much worse now.
Yeah, and I have an 11-year-old daughter who doesn't really understand what ISIS is, but she knows that she's scared, and she's now sleeping in bed with us every night.
Yeah.
Which
So what do you do, Allie? What do you do? You got little girls. You see what's happening. What can you say to other parents who are at their wits' end with their children, who are scared, and they're also scared as adults?
This is what I say. I say two things. I say to my kids, one is we help out everybody that is really going to need our help. Whatever in organization, we give, we volunteer, we help out. I'll tell you a story. I wasn't planning on story, which might be the end of my marriage. But we were watching the election. She says no. Well, then George Stephanopoulos will be free, honey. There you go.
I'm sorry.
Happy holidays.
I want to talk about your new show because I saw it last night, and it's just so fantastic.
Tell me later. I'll tell you later. It just involves my 14-year-old getting upset about the election and screaming "no abortions" really loudly.
I have a 14-year-old upset
and I was like,
well.
"You haven't kissed a boy yet. Don't use that word so flippantly." But she meant women's rights.
Right.
So.
It's women's rights. Yeah, the women's right to have an abortion. That's what everything depends on. She's scared of ISIS now. Why wasn't she scared during the Obama administration when ISIS was created by his crummy policies, by the fact that he gave up our victory in the Iraq War? I mean, this is, that calls into question, that quote, calls into question George Sokolopoulos' ability to cover the news. I'm sorry. If he were surrounded by conservatives saying, "George, you're getting out of hand, your craziness, this craziness that you've imposed on your family and your child is seeping into the news," that would be one thing. But he's surrounded by people who agree with him. So he thinks that's reality. He thinks that world where his child is so afraid of this election that she's sleeping in bed with him, he thinks that world is the world. This really calls this into question. So all of this is to come back to Rex Tillerson. Yesterday, I said that I was not worried about Rex Tillerson because of him. I was worried about him because of Trump, because Trump has said a lot of things about Vladimir Putin that seemed to me naive. And then I started to think about this. I mean, by the way, I was gratified when I turned on Charles Krauthammer on Fox, and he said, I think he was listening to the show. He almost gave our entire show yesterday. He came out of Krauthammer's mouth, and I thought, God, I must be a smart guy. If I'm as smart as Krauthammer, I must be a smart guy. And he made this point that, well, let's go back to Rex Tillerson. I want to stick with this. I started to think, what is it that Rex Tillerson actually represents? And what is it, if I'm worried about Trump, what is Trump saying? Because the thing is, people have a philosophy. Even if they don't know what their philosophy is, they have a philosophy. Even a serial killer has a philosophy. I mean, if you went to Satan and asked, what philosophy is this serial killer acting out? Satan would know, okay? He'd be able to express it. Maybe the serial killer couldn't, but he would be able to. Trump is slowly evolving a philosophy. We are seeing that philosophy becoming clearer as we go, and we're going to talk about it in a few minutes. But first, we have to say goodbye to our friends on Facebook and YouTube. And let me say, the mailbag is coming up. You can only participate. You can do that anywhere. You're allowed to say woohoo anywhere, but you can only participate in the mailbag if you subscribe to the Daily Wire. It's only a lousy $8 a month. You get to send in questions, and we will answer all your questions. Answers guaranteed 100% correct, 98.5% guaranteed to change your life, 2% guaranteed to change it for the better. And if you are subscribed, while I'm answering questions, you can send in your questions, and we will try and get some of them live on the air. Come on over.